Let us help you reach your peak in retirement. It's time for Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee.
Well, you're back here with us for another edition of Retirement Elevated Podcast with Sean Lee, managing partner at Elevated Retirement Group. I'm Mark, and I'm the co-host as we talk about investments, finance, retirement, all that good stuff. If you got questions or concerns, you need to talk with Sean and the team, reach out to them at 855-50-RETIRE. We always say before you take any action, if you hear something on the show that piques your interest, make sure you reach out and talk to a qualified professional like Sean and the team at Elevated Retirement Group. So give them a jingle at 855-50-RETIRE. You can also check us out online at retirementelevatedpodcast.com. That's retirementelevatedpodcast.com. And while you're there, subscribe to the show, hear past episodes, future episodes, all that good kind of stuff. Sean, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I am hanging in there. How's everything going? Smoothly right now? Everybody doing okay in the family?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just finished up baseball for the boy.
Okay. All done now. All right.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're done with one season. We decided that we wanted to test our boys a little bit. They're all in first grade playing machine pitch, so we put them in a league against third grade kids.
Oh, okay.
Let's just see how they do. And so it was an interesting first game to say the least. I think we went in expecting a little bit higher level of competition, and our boys ended up winning like 18-3 or something. So,
oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a
Whomping
good
on
group.
The third graders, huh?
Yeah, it's a good little group of boys, man.
Man. Remember when you were younger
junkies.
and you took down the bigger kids in school at something like, if you were on a baseball team or basketball team and somehow, they outplayed, one of the bigger kids. That was always cool.
Oh, man, they were so excited, and
I bet.
We've got a bunch of little baseball junkies on our team, so it's fun to watch them grow. And
that's awesome.
And we'll weave some of that into the show today, because I think that there's
all right. Yeah, let's do it.
Fun to go with it.
Well, actually, I got a fun topic and an interesting way to get into it, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's talk about being stuck on financial decisions. And I don't know if you like to go fishing or not, but did you ever go fishing with your dad or granddad or family members or anything?
Oh, yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it now with our kids.
Oh, okay, perfect. So you've heard the term fish or cut bait then. And basically that means, you got to make a decision, right? You got to either choose to fish or you got to let that bait go. We might also call it, poop or get off the pot type of thing, right? So sometimes you got to make a decision and move forward, or at least move in some direction. So I got a couple of things here I want to talk to you about. You tell us how maybe we can think about these things and hopefully if we are stuck, maybe get unstuck. So for people who do find themselves in this situation, a lot of times they'll say, man, there are so many financial decisions to make. There's just too many. I don't know where to even begin. Like, where do I even take the first step forward?
Right. They freeze. Right. So, and we were talking about our little guys playing baseball, and I mean, they're out in the field, and this is the first year that we don't go out in the field with them.
Okay.
Play your positions, do your thing. We'll yell at them, hey, this is where you need to be. What base are you going to? Whatever it may be.
Right.
And without fail, ball gets hit to somebody. They field it, and they look to second, they look to third, where do I go with it? And they're in their mind, they're trying to process all of this stuff that's going on. And I kind of look at that and just say, hey, simplify things. Don't make too many decisions at once.
Right.
The first thing that you need to do is get the ball. So figure out where you go from there. At the end of the day, throw it one base. First base is always a safe place to throw it. But when we start to look at financial decisions, where we get into trouble is where we start to, oh my gosh, it's piling up on top of me. I've got to create my income plan and my investment strategy, my tax strategy, healthcare. What about estate planning? All of these different things that we could talk about. Just bite them off one or two things at a time. The planning process could take a couple of months, and just go through a process where you say, okay, I need to create my income plan. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to create my investment strategy to match up with my income plan. And then I'm going to weave a tax plan on top of that. And then down the road, I'm going to come back and I'm going to worry about the protection pieces, the healthcare, the estate planning, and so on. But don't make all of your financial decisions at one time. Just bite them off. You don't eat an elephant in one bite. And so just
you definitely can tell you got kids.
Yeah. Just make one decision and move forward, because as you start to check things off your list, then clarity of the plan and comfort starts to come in. Where we get overwhelmed is we have to do too much at one time.
Okay. So I like that. So if you're thinking about it in terms of baseball analogy, well, maybe you can go with that a little bit, since that's what you've been doing. Just field the ball first. So when you're thinking about your financial decisions, just field the ball first, very first thing, and then you can move on. Now, some people might say, okay, fielding that ball, maybe that's research. Maybe that's taking a look and, you mentioned Social Security or pension or whatever the case is, or life insurance. So maybe it's doing some research. Well, other folks might come back and say, man, as soon as I type in the word life insurance, I'm just inundated with too much information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom went through this. I'm going to research out retirement. Well, everybody's an expert in retirement. And so when we start to look at research is a great thing. But you have to have clean, unbiased research when you go down this road. First step, start the process doing something. Do you go to we have 5-hour classes that we teach on planning. Do we go to a class like that and start the process and get a clear understanding of what do we look for? And then the research should be more on the advisor themselves, not necessarily on the vehicles, because the vehicles are what they are. The investment accounts, the insurance products, whatever they may be, they're just the tools. Let you know a little secret, most people have all the same tools. But find the right advisor.
Okay, absolutely, yeah. So sometimes don't let the research overwhelm you. I think obviously Google, it can be your friend and your enemy. Do a little bit just to kind of arm yourself with some potential questions that you'd like to ask when you sit down with an advisor, and that'll kind of help you not feel quite so overwhelmed, and you won't get that paralysis by analysis thing going on. All right, now, Sean, what if you just have a general confusion when it comes to, money and math, for example?
Just take it slow. It doesn't have to be a quick process. It kind of ties back into the making decisions. If you don't understand something, make sure that you get the answers to understand it. And that, I know that all ties together, but Sean, I'm confused about this, or I'm confused about how this works. Well, if those are confusing topics, or if you've got a question about something, take the time to get those questions answered, because I promise if you don't, down the road, those questions are going to continue, and they're going to come up again, and they're going to cause angst. They're going to cause anxiety until they get answered. So find somebody or go through a process or whatever it may be that you can take at your own pace to get your questions answered.
Yeah, because, you can't just stick your head in the sand and say, well, math confuses me. And I get it. Math was not my strong suit either, and how in the world my daughter's going to be a nuclear engineer blows my mind. But either way, she got that from her mom, I guess. But
yeah.
for me, math is just, it's a tougher. So, go into it, like Sean said, when you're having these issues, say, look, can you break this down for me? Kind of figure out a way to lower it down to an area where it makes sense. And don't let that necessarily make you feel frustrated or like you're not, able to keep up, because everybody has strengths and weaknesses when it comes to different things. Now,
exactly.
This is a weird one, Sean, but if we're talking about, getting stuck on decisions, do you deal with people sometimes who know they need to work with an advisor? They come in to see you, but they don't really like to talk about money. How do you get them to, let loose and share with you?
Money's it's been a taboo topic.
Right.
Yeah, it's you don't talk about money with your friends or your family, which
yeah, exactly.
In a lot of
some
cases,
don't even with their spouse.
You don't. Yeah, my wife's a great example. She understands our plan. She doesn't want to talk about our plan.
Right. I got you. She's got a working knowledge, but
yeah. Okay. And when you look at, I don't want to talk about money, I guess I have more of a cold-hearted response.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't help you then.
Right.
We've got to talk about the mathematics behind it. What does that math problem look like? What have you accumulated? What have you saved? But then more importantly, what's the goals, values, beliefs, and desires on the back end? Because it takes a good conversation about all of those things and intertwining them to build a plan. And if somebody doesn't want to talk about money with a professional like ourselves, we maintain complete privacy, they're not going to talk about money with anybody. And unfortunately, in those situations, a plan's not going to be built that could be the best for them. It's just going to kind of go as they go. If I don't talk about it, it's not real.
Right. Well, and again, sometimes, you have to be honest and be able to say, when somebody comes in, sometimes there's just philosophies, right? So you want to try to help the community. That's what you guys do. But there's going to be times when it's just not the right fit for people. And if that's the case, where a situation where you're just uncomfortable really finally opening up about your finances and the actual money, then it is going to be hard for an advisor to help you, kind of get where you need to be. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, it's not cold-hearted. It's just the facts of I can either help you if you let me or not, and that's the person's got to make that decision.
Well, and with our firm, we're to a point to where we don't work with everybody right now. And I had a great...
And you can't be all things to all people either, right?
No, you can't. And I had a great conversation with a couple on Friday afternoon. They'd come in, they were referred to us, and we were talking about what was important about money to them and what they look for in an advisor, what their expectations are.
Right.
And as we were wrapping up, I just said, hey, do you guys have any questions for me? And it was awesome because she asked me, Sean, what do you look for in a client that you represent? And I think that's a big deal because they're not only thinking, how can this gentleman help us, but
right.
Are we a good fit? And for us, it's, there's the mathematical component. Can we make an impact and make sure that their plan works? But more importantly for us, we want to work with people who give back in some form or fashion, whether it's financially or through volunteer work. But the money that they've accumulated, the money that they have, is really a tool to accomplish what they want to in their life. Money doesn't drive them.
Gotcha. Right.
Money's there for us to make an impact.
Right. It's a tool. It's a tool.
Exactly.
It's a vehicle. So, all right. Well, we're going to do one more here on the podcast, and then we're going to wrap up for this week. If you find yourself stuck on financial decisions, maybe it's because of a traumatic life event. Now, this is certainly understandable, and there's a lot of things that can trigger someone freezing up when it comes to making a financial decision based on the fact that they just went through a traumatic life event.
So here's the deal. Depending on the traumatic event, we go through a divorce, death, disability all the time.
Sure.
But a lot of this becomes much easier if you've taken the steps in advance to build a plan.
Absolutely, right.
And so when we look at, hey, okay, we've gone through the process, we've built a clearly defined income plan, we've got the proper allocation to follow that plan, our tax strategy is already in place, and Mr. Smith passes away, we don't need to make any decisions for 6 months to a year. We've already got the contingency built in that the plan continues on autopilot. And so when there's a traumatic life event, if you've put things in place in advance, you don't have to do anything. The one thing that we don't want to get caught in is, oh no, this happened, now I have to make a decision.
Right. And unfortunately, that does happen, though. So if I'm going to play devil's advocate and hit the other side, to your point, if the plan's in place, things could be a lot easier when you go through that, and then you're able to just focus on the emotional side. Mm-hmm. Had you not done the planning, well, now you're dealing with both, and that's where people kind of get into a bit of a pickle. It's sometimes, especially if you go with the death of a spouse, sometimes it's things that you're not even remotely thinking about, like the fact that when you go to file taxes, you'll be in a different tax bracket.
Right.
You were doing joint, now it's single, right? So there's all these different things that you got to think about. So to Sean's point, having a plan ahead of time is certainly going to help. If not, do you need to take the time, Sean, to think about things and talk with several people before making action if you don't have a plan in place?
I would take it slow. And
okay.
In times where there has been a traumatic event, and I equate, and we'll talk about I don't want to say worst case traumatic event, but passing of a spouse.
Sure, right.
And if you haven't built a strategy, there's a lot of factors that come into play. So at that point, if you haven't built a strategy and you need to build a strategy, you need to have more players involved. Not just an advisor, but I would recommend having kids involved.
Okay. All right.
Make them part of the planning process, because chances are things are a little bit foggy for decision making. You want to have a group of people around that have you in their corner.
Kind of check your thought processes in case you're not firing all cylinders. Okay, well, that's good. That's good advice. All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good topic here this week on the podcast. If you find yourself stuck on financial decisions on one of these categories we went over, all of it kind of comes back to, I like the little baseball analogy. What's the first thing you need to do when the ball's been hit and you're playing in the outfield? Just field the ball. Take it one step at a time and move your way through there. Don't start thinking about which base you got to throw to and so on and so forth just yet. Just make sure sure you get the ball first. And that's a great way of looking at it. So if you're stuck on financial decisions, you need a little bit of help, reach out to Sean and the team at Elevated Retirement Group by calling 855-50-RETIRE. That's 855-50-RETIRE. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, go to the website, share with friends and family, give us a like, a review, all that good kind of stuff. RetirementElevatedPodcast.com. That's RetirementElevatedPodcast.com. Sean, buddy, thanks for your time and continued good luck to whooping on the third graders.
Thanks, man. Have a good week.
I guess if somebody caught that later on, they might not realize what I meant. His son's team.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Hey, y'all have a great time, and we'll see you next time here on Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee of Elevated Retirement Group. Bye-bye.
Investment advisory services offered through Elevated Capital Advisors, LLC, and SEC